I think the greatest challenge when looking at schools of the future is very much surrounding the relationship between the architect and the educator. I think for too long the old model of design has been very much focused on the single classroom model, and it's been very easy for architects to actually interpret that into the built form. I think what's challenging that over the last 10 years is the same sort of learning but different ways of interacting within buildings, and we've gone very much from the information delivery to the collaborative learning style, which is obviously changing the dynamics of a school and a space. I think it's really important from an architect's point of view that we not only listen to the educators, but we also start a journey with them. And I think that journey with them is all about educating them as well. We're all learners. We can learn off educators, educators can learn off architects. And I think having that collaboration, having that discourse between them really helps to formulate some really good solutions when looking at new learning environments. I don't think learning environments of the future are totally focused around technology. I think technology has been one of those catalysts that's come along to change the way we think about learning and teaching. I think they've been there as great tools to explore the way that information is delivered, so that it's gone very much away from the teacher focus to being ones where the students can find their own way and then they're helped to find the correct information. I think that's a powerful way that technology has influenced things. I think some of the spaces and some of the buildings we've seen designed have been focused on technology, but I think we've moved so far over the last 5 years from the desktop PC right through now to the iPad, which is really transforming the way we learn, and it's got great opportunities for transforming the way spaces are used. So I think they're very important. What we've found in Australia is very much that the flow of activity between spaces has been the thing that's been driving the new designs. The buildings have been traditional models up until now. The new buildings are becoming very much focused on the flow between spaces, good light, good ventilation, also very strong links between indoor and outdoors in Australia, because obviously we can use the outdoors in a lot stronger way, and so the outdoor is becoming part of that classroom environment, which is important. I think one of the other challenges that is international is the fact that we've got a lot of old schools, and really trying to work out how we deal with those old schools when we're looking at a new paradigm in teaching and learning is a great challenge. So it's actually in some ways easy to show examples of new schools where you've got the opportunity to start from scratch, but to actually adapt buildings and redesign buildings in a way that it takes on the new form of flow of activity spaces is important. One of the projects we saw yesterday on the school tour sort of indicated that they tried to do that with a 100-year-old building and try to get some flow happening in the spaces. It's a real challenge for architects, but it's also a real challenge for educators to know how far that they can push the limits. But at least looking at trying to change the fabric of buildings to make them more usable in today's learning environment, I think is very important. From what I saw of the schools, the 4 schools I visited yesterday, I think there is a difference between what is happening here and in Australia. I think one of the major differences is the number of levels of a school. We don't have a lot of multi-storey school buildings in Australia. We might go to 4 stories perhaps in inner city areas where it's very tight for land, but we don't have that issue with the land available, which is just one of those things. We've also got the ability, because of our climate, to have a number of different buildings, so we don't try and get everything into a single building, but we have a myriad of buildings that are then linked together, and then we may have outdoor spaces, courtyard spaces and the like, to link them together. So that is a very different sort of model. It's more akin to the southern states through the United States, where the climate again dictates how you can use the outdoor spaces. So that's certainly a difference. I mean, your extremes of climate here in Denmark are such that you'll want to be inside for a lot of the year, and I can certainly understand that. I think the other thing, the challenging thing, which I found yesterday, was the innovation of using roof spaces. It's something we haven't done in Australia very much. We're just starting now to introduce some of those ideas of roof gardens and using space better. But I think the way that the roof is used here in some of those schools is quite exciting. And I think it's because of your limited space that you actually use every space available to make it work. And I think we can learn a lot from that in Australia. Another difference is the sporting facilities. Australia is sports mad, which we all know, and Australia loves their sport, and the kids use their sporting facilities a lot. So a lot of the space that's actually used on a school site is outdoor space with football ovals and cricket ovals and hockey and soccer and basketball and tennis, and it goes on. And so there is a large component of sport that is part of the school curriculum. And that's going to be a little bit different from obviously what happens in Denmark, where the focus is very much on community sport, which we still do in Australia, but not to the same extent, so that makes a difference. The other case with the actual design of the buildings, you obviously try and maximise the light and the sun coming into your buildings. As you can imagine, in many places in Australia we try and limit that. We try and get the light, but certainly we have to control the sun very much because of the heat. Having said that, we are changing our own sustainability guidelines in Australia at the moment, really to catch up with Europe, and to an extent where we start to be a little bit more responsible in the way that we are heating and cooling our buildings, because we do cool our buildings more than we heat them. But certainly we want to make sure that the buildings are sustainable enough and dealt with in a way that makes them sensible, economic, I guess. One other issue that we've got in Australia is the attitude of inclusiveness and universal access. So whilst we may see a lot of, because we don't have a lot of multi-storey buildings, we don't have the issue of stairs so much, but we certainly try and look at any public space, any public entry point into a school as being something that is accessible for all, and that whether that is physically disabled, mentally disabled, visually impaired, it is becoming very much a part of the focus of the design guidelines for schools, so that's very important. But again, I can't help but reiterate that the issue is the relationship between the architect and the educators as being an essential relationship that needs to be developed, and it needs to be developed out of respect for each other, and challenging each other to have fun and be excited about learning and be excited about schools of the future. And I don't think it's up to one or the other to really drive the answer. It really becomes that collaborative learning effort. And given that that's what's happening in the classroom, I think that's certainly what should be happening between architects and educators.